Coach Jenny. I am going to discuss on the continuation of work-related attitudes in Chapter 4. Previously, you learned from Miss Lydia Atton that attitude has three basic components: two theories of job satisfaction, there are consequences of having dissatisfied employees, also the ways of boosting job satisfaction, and distinguishing between three fundamental forms of organizational commitment. So with identifying the benefits of having a committed workforce. After discussing this chapter, you will also be able to describe ways of developing organizational commitment, distinguish between the concepts of prejudice, stereotypes, and discrimination. You can also describe the two major forms of sexual harassment and the steps organizations can take to combat sexual harassment. Lastly, distinguish between affirmative action plans and diversity management programs. What is organizational commitment? Thus far, our discussion has centered on people's attitudes toward their jobs. However, to fully understand work-related attitudes, we also must focus on people's attitudes toward the organizations in which they work. That is, their organizational commitment. The concept of organizational commitment is concerned with the degree to which people are involved with their organizations and are interested in remaining within them. Of 2016, organizational commitment affects turnover intentions, attitudes toward changes in the organization, and job satisfaction. There are three distinct forms of commitment. First, we're going to take up continuance commitment. Have you ever stayed on a job because you just don't want to bother to find a new one? If so, you're already familiar with the concept of continuance commitment. This refers to the strength of a person's desire to remain working for an organization due to his or her belief that it may be costly to leave. The longer people remain in their organizations, the more they stand to lose what they have invested in the organization over the years, like, for example, retirement plans or close relationships. Many people are committed to staying on their jobs simply because they are unwilling to risk losing these things. Such individuals may be said to have a high degree of continuance commitment. Science suggests that today, continuance commitment is not as high as it used to be. Traditionally, people sought jobs that would offer them lifetime employment. Many employees would stay on their jobs their whole working lives, starting at the bottom and working their way up to the top. But today, that scenario is not readily found. The unspoken pact of job security in exchange for loyalty has all but faded from the organizational scene. The second type of organizational commitment is the affective commitment. The strength of people's desires to continue working for an organization because they have agree with its underlying goals and values. People feeling high degrees of affective commitment desire to remain in their organizations because they endorse what the organization stands for and are willing to help in it in its mission. Sometimes, particularly when an organization is undergoing change, employees may wonder whether their personal values continues to be in line with those of the organization in which they may work. When this happens, they may question whether they still belong, and if they believe not, they may resign. A third type of organizational commitment is known as normative commitment. This refers to employees' feelings of obligation to stay with the organization because of pressures from others. People who have high degrees of normative commitment are greatly concerned about what others would think of them for leaving. They would be reluctant to disappoint their employees and concerned that their fellow employees may think poorly of them for resigning. Okay. Why strive for a committed workforce? People who feel deeply committed to their organizations behave differently than those who do not. Specifically, several key aspects of work behavior have been linked to organizational commitment. We have here two: committed employees are unlikely to withdraw, and then next is committed employees are willing to make sacrifices for the organization. We'll take first the first one, committed employees that are unlikely to withdraw. The more committed employees are to their organizations, the less likely they are to resign and to be absent, what we referred to as withdrawal behavior in the context of job satisfaction. Being committed leads people to stay on their jobs and to show up for work when they are supposed to. Then these committed employees are willing to make sacrifices for the organization. Beyond remaining in their organizations, those who are highly committed to them demonstrate a great willingness to share and to make sacrifices required for the organization to thrive. There are approaches to developing organizational commitment. Some determinants of organizational commitment fall outside of managers' of spheres of control, giving them few opportunities to enhance these feelings. For example, commitment tends to be lower when the economy is such that employment opportunities are plentiful. An abundance of job options will surely lower continuance commitment, and there's not too much a company can do about it. However, although managers cannot control the external economy, they can do several things to make employees want to stay working for the company, that is, to enhance effective commitment. First, enriching jobs. People tend to be highly committed to their organizations to the extent that they have a good chance to take control over the way they do their jobs and are recognized for making important contributions. Align the interests of the company with those of the employees. Whenever making something good for the company, also make something good for its employees. Those employees are likely to be highly committed to those companies. Many companies do this quite directly, but by introducing profit sharing plans, that is, incentive plans in which employees receive bonuses in proportion to the company's profitability. Such plans are often quite effective in enhancing organizational commitment, especially when they are perceived to be administered fairly. Recruit and select new employees whose values closely match those of the organization. Recruiting new employees is important not only because it provides opportunities to find people whose values match those of the organization, but also because of the dynamics of the recruitment process itself. Specifically, the more an organization invests in someone by working hard to lure him or her to the company, the more that individual is likely to return the same investment of energy by expressing commitment toward the organization. In other words, companies that show their employees take care enough to work hard to attract them are likely to find those individuals strongly committed to the company. In conclusion, it is useful to think of organizational commitment as an attitude that may be influenced by managerial actions. Not only might people be selected who are predisposed to be committed to the organization, but also various measures can be taken to boost commitment in the face of indications that it is lagging. Negative attitudes toward coworkers prejudice. First, stereotypes. As you surely realize, stereotypes, whether positive or negative, are generally inaccurate. If we know more about someone than whatever we might assume based on his or her membership in various groups, we probably would make more accurate judgments. However, to the extent that we often find it difficult or inconvenient to learn everything we need to know about someone, we frequently rely on stereotypes as a kind of mental shortcut. So, for example, if you believe that individuals belonging to group X are lazy and that person A belongs to group X, you would be predisposed to believe that person A is lazy too. After all, he or she might not be lazy at all, despite the fact that you might assume so based on the stereotype. Then this discrimination is prejudicial attitudes are particularly harmful when the behavioral predisposition turn into actual behaviors. In such instances, people become the victims of others' prejudices, that is discrimination. If prejudice is an attitude, then think of discrimination as the behavior consistent with that attitude. What is this halo effect? This occurs when the perceiver's general impression of a target distorts his or her perception of the target on specific dimensions. Halos can also be negative. A person can be mistakenly perceived as being different than they really are. Diversity management programs and mentoring programs. These are the strategies for overcoming workplace prejudice. For diversity management programs, in recent years, organizations have become increasingly proactive in their attempts to eliminate prejudice and have taken it upon themselves to go beyond affirmative action requirements. Their approach is not just to hire a broader group of people than usual, but to create an atmosphere in which diverse groups can flourish. They are not merely trying to obey the law or attempting to be socially responsible, but to recognize that diversity is a business issue. Diversity programs are more likely to be successful if they include repeated efforts with follow-up activities to see if the training accomplished its objectives. While these mentoring programs, mentoring is a process through which an experienced member of an organization, the mentor provides advice and guidance to a less experienced member, the protege, and helps the less experienced person learn the ropes and do the right things to advance in the organization. Mentoring programs can be formal or informal. Objectives of diversity training programs includes, we have here four. First, making explicit and breaking down organizational members' stereotypes that result in inaccurate perceptions and attributions. Second, making members aware of different kinds of backgrounds, experiences, and values. Third, showing members how to deal effectively with diversity related conflicts and tensions. Lastly, generally improving members' understanding of each other. Diversity training can include, but is not limited to, first, role playing, in which participants act out appropriate and inappropriate ways to deal with diverse employees. Second, self awareness activities, in which participants' own prejudices and stereotypes are revealed. Thirdly, awareness activities, in which participants learn about others who differ them in lifestyle, culture, sexual orientation, gender, and so on. The successful mentoring requires, first, an atmosphere of mutual respect, second, an atmosphere of mutual understanding, third, the mentor must have the protege's best interests in mind. We have here sexual harassment. The term harassment describes the behavior of a person or people that another person finds offensive, aggravating, or otherwise unwelcome. Not all harassment is unlawful. In our society, the term harassment is used very broadly. Like stop harassing me can mean stop annoying me or stop bugging me. The definition of unlawful workplace harassment is much narrower than the general definition of harassment. There are specific laws and legal standards used to determine which behaviors and actions are unlawful. Sexual harassment can be either economic or environmental and is defined as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. For a subordinate employee to be sexually harassed by a supervisor, for example, the unwelcome sexual behavior must seriously impact the employee's job or be used by the supervisor as a basis for employment decisions about the employee. For harassment to be considered unlawful, it must be all of the following. First, related to a protected category. Second, unwelcome. Third, offensive to a reasonable person in the recipient's position. And then fourth, severe or pervasive. There are key steps that organization can take to combat the sexual harassment problem. This includes, first, develop a sexual harassment policy supported by top management. This policy should describe and prohibit both quid pro quo and hostile work environment sexual harassment, provide examples of types of behaviors that are prohibited, outline a procedure employees that can follow to report sexual harassment, describe the disciplinary action that will be taken for instances of sexual harassment, describe the organization's commitment to education and training organizational members about sexual harassment. Clearly communicate the organization's sexual harassment policy throughout the organization. Third, investigate charges of sexual harassment with a fair complaint procedure. And then fourth, take corrective action as soon as possible once it has been determined that sexual harassment has taken place. Lastly, provide sexual harassment training and education to all members of the organization. Report everyone, and always remember that excellence is not a skill, it is an attitude. This is by Ralph Marston. Thank you all and have a good day.